Hello, I'm Kristen Oaks-White.
And I'm Avery Davidson. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. Soybean planters are again rolling in Louisiana. That's a big deal as this rainy spring has stopped a lot of farmers from getting into the field.
This week, TWILA's Neil Melanson shows us how one pair of brothers are hoping for a bit of dry weather to get their crop into the ground.
Brothers Dallas and Reed Ardoin are busy with this pump right now. It's pretty important as rains are once again in the forecast. Dallas Ardoin says this field has flooded before and he doesn't want to have to replant these beans.
We got in the field a little bit later than we wanted to for planting. These beans behind us are cane row beans. This will be cane, and hopefully late August, early September, we'll cut these beans and it'll go straight into planting cane.
The problem with beans in rainy weather is twofold. One, on lower ground like this, the water can pool up and drown those beans. On higher rows like this, it's not as big of a problem. But when you have rainy weather followed by hot, dry weather, it can crust this ground up that prevents these bean plants from coming up in the first place.
We are above that 5-year average for this time of year, so it is going in the ground well. And so right now there's no concerns about not getting it planted. The question is always going to be, how much are we going to get planted?
The Ardoins got into cane 5 years ago, and as you heard, all this bean acreage will become sugarcane. Ardoin says the economics just work out better for cane right now.
The cane market's been good, and that's where the money's at right now. That's been much more profitable for us the past few years.
Reed Ardoin is finishing his senior year at LSU in Ag Economics. He knew from an early age he wanted to spend his life farming and says that's why change is just something the farm has to roll with, and he's good with it.
The market's going to get like the cane market. There's so many people getting into it. Never know what the next couple of years are going to look like.
The rainy weather isn't the only challenge soybean farmers face. The markets for grains have been persistently low this year, so farmers like the Ardoins are hoping to make up for it on volume.
Last year we fought the same problem in these lower $10 ranges. We were probably a little better going into bean planting last year than we are right now. Tariffs are a big factor in that, obviously. But we did see some relief when China said they were willing to talk.
The Ardoins are like many farmers in South Louisiana, walking the line between crops. However, with grain prices down and sugarcane prices remaining stable to higher, the direction of crop acreage for many farmers in South Louisiana is pretty clear. Reporting from Melville, I'm Neil Melanson.
Despite all the rain, soybean planting in Louisiana is well ahead of the 5-year average, which is normally around 60% this time of year. According to USDA statistics, soybean planting is almost 90% complete statewide. Well, 60 years straight is a long time to do any job, let alone farming. At 81 years old, Tensas Parish's Roy Smith is the third generation to work this same piece of land, farming soybeans and corn.
He and his wife sat down with TWILA's Josh Meeks to talk about how much has changed in 60 years and how much has stayed the same.
This story starts with a bit of irony. Roy Smith isn't out in his fields today in the village of Waterproof because it's been raining.
You've always got to save money for a rainy day.
But just because he's not farming doesn't mean he's not working.
I have people all the time that ask me how long is he going to farm. His reply is as long as I possibly can.
At 81 years old, he's got no plans of slowing down. Today, he's checking out his garden, which he tends to when he can't get on his tractor. It's a familiar practice as he's been doing it for quite some time.
I started in 1966 and have farmed every year since 1966, and this is my 60th crop.
He's spent his whole life within these 400 acres of soybeans and corn.
My grandfather moved here and bought this place and farmed it himself until he retired, and my dad farmed. My dad was already farming, and he farmed this too until he retired, and I started farming shortly after he retired.
In 60 years, he's seen a lot of change. Planting and harvesting these fields used to be a tougher grind.
Prices were terrible at that time, but it didn't cost a lot in expenses to make a crop. We made a good living. And combine at that time was only a 4-row combine and like a 14-foot header. And nowadays you see most combines with a 40-foot header on them, and sometimes plus. It's gotten easier, more complicated.
Roy and his wife, Billa Faye, raised 2 kids out here. They say farm life gives character and values you can't really find anywhere else.
When we were raising our children, and they were growing up on a farm. You had work time and you had play time. They know how things are harvested. They know what you do with it. They know the money that is put into it. They know the time that is put into it. Other people take all that for granted.
And they don't see the past through rose-colored glasses either. They've had their fair share of struggles in 60 years.
We have, just a few years ago, soybeans that rotted in the field we didn't even harvest. And you got to be pretty tough to keep going with have a good attitude. Everybody says, well, next year would be better. You got to look at it that way.
But it's those hard times that have kept Roy strong through the years. He says his secret is to never stop moving. If he's not farming, he's gardening. And if he's not gardening, he's got other hobbies to keep him busy.
Because I love doing it, and I need to be doing something to stay active, and what more will keep me active than what I've always done.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's Roy's policy. I asked him if there's any chance of retirement in his future.
My wife has said, and others have said over the years, if you win the lottery, you don't quit farming. I said, if I won the lottery, I would just farm easier.
So practically everything that comes out of that garden is given away. Virtually everyone in town who has any kind of relationship with the Smiths knows they can always count on jars of salsa, possum grapes, pasta sauce, and much, much more. And guys, you know, everybody has that story about, you know, back in my day or when I was your age. In fact, I'm guilty of it too. But when you sit down and you listen to their stories about how much has changed in 60 years, you can really kind of see how things have changed in 60 years and why they feel the way that they do.
But you know what hasn't changed, Josh, is as soon as you said possum grapes, we had the one question. Mm-hmm. What's a possum grape?
I had the same question when they gave me the jar. It has nothing to do with possums being involved. They just happen to like them. They grow really high on trees, and they're very tart. She gave me a jelly. They're kind of like raspberries, but they're very good.
Interesting. Awesome story, Josh Meeks. Thank you so much for bringing it to us.
Thank you.
The legislature has a busy agenda these days, which includes issues like agriculture and coastal restoration. Those two issues were brought together last week as the Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana held its Capitol Day. CRCL has collected 16 million tons of oyster shells to build barriers to help stop coastal erosion. Dara Fox-Bach with CRCL says it's a successful partnership between oyster fisheries and consumers.
We work directly with oyster fishers, oyster fishing communities, restaurants that serve their oysters, and we kind of activate this circular economy where the oysters are harvested, and we work with oyster fishers to promote the longevity of the oyster industry, our local food cuisine, our local food culture, and we return those shells right back to the water because oysters like to grow on top of other shells. So by doing this, we're educating the general public on the importance of sustaining this really vital industry that not only supports fishing communities locally, Louisiana exports a third of the nation's oysters, so it's just such an important economic and cultural asset for our state.
Next week, TWILA's Neil Mawson will bring us to the waters where Bayou Rosa farms those oysters, bringing new life to a traditional native agricultural practice.
U.S. Senator John Kennedy is once again reintroducing an act to support crawfish farmers in the aftermath of severe weather. Known as the Crawdad Act, Kennedy introduced the Crawfish Recovery Assistance from Weather Disasters and Droughts. Senator Bill Cassidy co-sponsored the bill, which makes crawfish farmers eligible for the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program, better known as ELAP. That program was temporarily expanded in 2021, but the Crawdad Act makes the move permanent. ELAP funds were a lifesaver to farmers in Louisiana in the aftermath of the 2023 severe drought. Kennedy's bill also classifies drought as a weather event that could be declared an emergency by the Secretary of Agriculture for crawfish.
Speaking of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, she offered assurance to farmers who are struggling due to the rising costs from tariffs.
And I know we've seen the market fluctuate, our soy and corn farmers especially, some of our hog farmers especially, but at the end of the day what we're doing is we're realigning an entire world economy around American products, and that will affect our farmers and our ranchers more than any any other, I believe, more than any other American producer and whatever they're producing.
Just this week, China and the U.S. announced that they would drastically roll back tariffs.
As the federal government continues slashing jobs, more than 15,000 USDA employees accepted buyouts to leave. Reuters reports that represents about 15% of the agency's workforce. President Trump and his administration offered federal employees several months of pay and benefits if they chose to leave. Those numbers are expected to rise because employees over the age of 40 are being given more time to make their decision. Employees that are exempt from the federal hiring freeze include wildland firefighters, veterinarians, and food safety inspectors. Still to come on TWILA, our Road to Leadership series highlights the hard work of a cattle rancher in southeast Louisiana.
And later, sure, there's TWILA, but what does a Farm Bureau communications team actually do? Join us in Kansas City, Missouri, next.
You're watching This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, the only TV show bringing Louisiana farmers and consumers together every week.
It's time to take a look at some crawfish prices from around the state.
If you're in Monroe, check out Captain Avery Seafood, where you can get a pound of live for $2.50 and a pound of boiled for $2.99.
If you're in Alexandria, Louisiana Gulf Seafood on Monroe Highway sells them for $1.95 a pound live and $4.95 a pound boiled.
And in A-Meat, head over to Seafood to Go, where they're $2.75 a pound live and $3.49 a pound boiled.
These crawfish prices are brought to you by the Louisiana Crawfish Promotion and Research Board, which reminds you to always eat Louisiana crawfish and to make sure, ask before you eat.
There's a familiar face coming back to lead the Louisiana Farm Service Agency, and Louisiana Farm Bureau offers its heartfelt congratulations. Craig McCain has 37 years of experience serving the state's agriculture industry. He grew up in Northeast Louisiana and graduated with a degree in ag business. He joined FSA as a county operations trainee, where he served 3 counties for nearly 25 years. McCain was also FSA director during President Donald Trump's first term. Louisiana Farm Bureau President Richard Fontenot says that McCain's knowledge is critical at a time when agriculture is facing low commodity prices and high input costs without the safety net of an updated farm bill.
Southern University in Baton Rouge has a new pair of leaders helming the school's agricultural programs. Southern announced that Dr. Tiffany Franklin is the new Vice Chancellor for Extension and Outreach at the school's Agricultural Research and Extension Center. Dr. Franklin is currently a program specialist for the USDA Office of Partnerships and Public Engagement. In this new role, she will oversee administrative roles in the Ag Center program, including the Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Development Institute. The school also announced that Dr. Raquel Square Ailes will serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor. Dr. Ailes is currently the Ag Center's Youth Program Development Leader and STEAM Specialist. Both women will assume their new roles starting on June 1st. Volunteer leaders are the heart of Louisiana Farm Bureau.
In this week's edition of Road to Leadership, we meet the second woman to serve on Louisiana's Farm Bureau Board's Executive Committee, Amelia Kent.
I am Amelia Kent, and I am the 3rd Vice President of the Louisiana Farm Bureau Federation. My husband Russell and I raise beef cattle in and around Clinton, Louisiana. So I had been a Farm Bureau insurance customer since having a driver's license, but I really first got involved with my local board when a neighbor and a friend encouraged me to get onto the parish board and the Young Farmer and Rancher chair capacity. So in September 2007, thanks to Hank Schumacher, I got involved at my local board. When I was getting involved at the local board level, I was also starting my ag leadership class. So I have a really hard time peeling the two away or differentiating the two. That 2-year time frame was when I got immersed in Farm Bureau while also participating in the LSU Ag Leadership Program. My involvement is worth the time for so many reasons. First and foremost, because Farm Bureau is working for us when we're working in our businesses. But also I consider Farm Bureau my avenue to stay well informed on current affairs. I consider it my professional development. I can't tell you how much training I have been the product of, which gives me the ability to leverage my voice. My motivation was advocacy, but as much consumer facing, to put that face to the farmer and rancher for the consumer audience, because the reality is less than 1.5% of our population is directly on the farm or participates in production agriculture or the allied industries, which means 98.5% do not. And more than that, these are members of our communities, or members of our society, but they also are the vast majority of our electorate. Farm Bureau is an excellent avenue not only to voice those opinions about some current affair in agriculture and rural America. It's a place where you can voice them, you can learn more on the topic. I can't tell you how many times I thought that I knew about a topic until I went to a meeting and I got more information that was rooted in better data and better research. So, and then changed my opinion on the topic. The parish meetings are an excellent way to start and get your feet wet, because that's a smaller group of people in a much more concentrated area. So the challenges, the issues may be a lot more aligned because they're at the local level. We have staff addressing state policy issues. We have staff addressing national policy issues. And even if a farmer is not necessarily a member of Farm Bureau, that does not mean that Farm Bureau is not working on their behalf. So point blank, if someone is engaged in production agriculture, they should be a member of Farm Bureau because of the policy-facing work that we do.
Join us next week when we'll talk to Board Secretary and Treasurer Mike Melanson. You can also see all of the other Road to Leadership stories we've done on our website at twilatv.org. The Louisiana Farm Bureau podcast is a great place to find interesting stories about the men and women who grow the food and fiber that we all depend on.
In the latest episode, host Carl Wiggers sits down with Ronnie Anderson, who was president of Louisiana Farm Bureau for 31 years. In the interview, Anderson shared how he was first introduced to the organization, the powerful role the dairy industry once played in Farm Bureau, and some of the ways he saw Louisiana Farm Bureau's strength when it comes to shaping policy.
Use value is probably the most important thing that went on in Louisiana. If we did not have that, if you look around and all the development subdivisions and how cities are growing, and if you didn't have use value taxation, you could not stay on and farm because of the taxes that would be imposed on you. And that's probably one of the bigger issues that we did. That we also had right to work. Farm Bureau did a number on the labor unions in the state.
If you want to watch or listen to these podcasts as soon as they come out, subscribe to the Louisiana Farm Bureau's YouTube channel, and you can also go wherever you get your podcast and subscribe to the Louisiana Farm Bureau podcast. You'll find all those links at our website at twilatv.org. Still to come on TWILA, we've heard that food across the pond in the UK isn't all that great.
So what happens when a pair of tourists sit down at the crawfish table? Find out next on TWILA. There are 51 organizations that make up the American Farm Bureau Federation, and they work together to be the unified voice of agriculture.
To be the voice for farmers and ranchers, the communications experts at each of those organizations get together annually to network and share ideas. It's called ComsCon, and this year they gathered in Kansas City, Missouri. In fields like this one, farmers cultivate the story of agriculture, but the long hours and demanding schedule of growing crops, taking care of the land, and raising livestock make it difficult for those in agriculture to tell that story. That's where these communications experts from farm bureaus across the country come in.
So we have Federation information.
This is the annual American Farm Bureau Federation ComsCon, a place for men and women dedicated to telling the farmer's story, to share ideas, network, and, well,
it's really great that
communicate. Terry Moore is the Vice President of Communications for the American Farm Bureau Federation.
If we're going to leverage our true strength as a federation, then we have to collaborate. We have to come together and make sure we're aligned, and then we truly can be the voice of agriculture.
There's a lot I don't know, And so I really thrive from being able to build off and get expertise and get ideas and feedback from other professionals here.
Matt Hargraves is the Vice President of Communications for the Utah Farm Bureau. In his role, he deals with issues that are very different from those in Louisiana, like grazing of federal lands and scarcity of water. Regardless of the issues, Hargraves is interested in the tools and techniques used in other states that can help him better tell the story around these issues. Tools like artificial intelligence.
I really liked some of the discussion on artificial intelligence and kind of the role it plays and how we communicate messages, how we preserve authenticity, and yet also not be afraid of tools that are there, but you learn how to use them most effectively.
It's great to hear what other states are doing, and other states are years ahead as far as some of the efforts that they've tried to do in engaging consumers and trying to build that divide, whereas some other states are maybe just trying to dip their toe in the water. So you've got a variety of states. Some states have a bigger budget, have bigger memberships, have different agricultural goals or commodities. So whenever you get to hear the different ideas and the different varieties and the way they exchange their ideas or the way they reach out to consumers or the way they reach out to farmers and how that comes together, you know, those are always resources that maybe we can employ back home to help grow and improve our own industry.
Janet Adkisson is the Director of Communications for Missouri Farm Bureau. It's at this conference where she learns that for most Americans, farmers and ranchers are trusted voices. That's why it's vital these communicators help those in agriculture tell their authentic story.
In this period of time, there are pressures coming to farmers from the political side, from the food system side, and from consumer sentiment. So it might feel a little bit crushing from all directions, but here's the great news. And here's one of the most powerful points for engagement. Trust in farmers continues to be at an incredibly high level. About 81% of America trust farmers. And not only trust farmers more than anyone else. They are back at the top of the list.
Next year's ComsCon will be in New Orleans. It'll be mid-August next year, and many said they were looking forward to seeing a sugarcane farm. I think we can make that happen. It'll just be a little hot. It's time now for this week's TWILA Boost. Louisiana takes a lot of pride in its unique culture, especially when it comes to food, and we'll take advantage of any opportunity to share a table with a visitor.
A pair of Brits raised on English fish and chips made the journey to Lake Charles to sit down for a little authentic Cajun cooking.
We are in Lake Charles in Louisiana. And we are about to eat crawfish boil. Look at this place. It's not even got a roof. This is insane, mate. Max Deli. This is legit. Look at the people eating full bowls of crawfish. Mate, this is insane. What's going on? The spice in the air is making us cough. I might shake his hand. Hello. Look at the size of that crawfish. I mean, that's mental, mate. So I'm guessing the meat is in the tail here. Spicy. What in the world? Right.
And then right here.
My eyeballs, my throat. Why is it potato? Cool. Oh, yes. From the tail? Yeah, from the tail. Nice. You eat all of that? Oh, yeah. When you get the meat, I love it. It's worth it.
I'm trying to be nice when I say this, but you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. If there's crunching involved, you're doing it wrong.
Well, you got to learn somehow. Anyway.
Ask a native.
That does it for this edition of TWILA. Thank goodness. Be sure to join us next week when we'll introduce you to the 2025 Louisiana Ag in the Classroom Teacher of the Year.
Until then, you can watch all of our stories online at twilatv.org, and be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on TikTok and Instagram. You can find all of these stories and more on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and maybe we can teach you how to eat crawfish.
For all of us here at TWILA, thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again right here next week.